Hello, and welcome to Mornings with Joel, commercial real estate podcast, where we focus on rising stars and established players in commercial real estate and talk to them about how they are building legacies in today's marketplace. So we'd like to welcome you all to the Mornings with Joel CRE podcast. We're very excited to have a special guest and a longtime friend of mine, Jeff Monge, who is in the studio with us today. And Jeff, what's up, man? How you doing?
What's going on, man? Look, I don't know how long you knew me, man, but Monge, horde head. I know.
If
you was up here, further north, you know how to say it better,
Yeah, I've been going for a while, so
you forgot.
Yeah. Well, my apologies.
All right, so
we'll just stick with Jeff.
Jeff is always good.
Yeah. So it's been a minute, but yeah, man. I mean, you knew me when I had hair, so how about that? So we'll leave it there.
I still got mine, but people question me, and I have to pull it a couple of times to let them know.
There you go. Probably hiding some gray, but that's another conversation. Oh man, so good to have you today, man. It's obviously it's been a minute. We've been trying to put this together for a while. I know your schedule runs a little crazy, so thanks for joining us and getting on here. So Jeff, let's talk a little bit and kind of dive right in. Obviously, you've been in the real estate game for a long time. I think we initially go back to urban America, which was like the late 90s, early 2000s. And how was that for you? How did that relate to your experience and your development as a player in this space?
Well, I actually came to urban America. Prior to that, I was at the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone working in Harlem, and if you recall, federal initiative, private nonprofit that received essentially the reins to implement a $250 million community development initiative, and those $250 million between city, state, federal funds to help revitalize Upper Manhattan. Through that process, and I came in there, my undergrad was in computer engineering technology, my master's in business management with a focus in human resources, right? Totally different. But I was, I had, a big finance background through those, and math background through that educational experience. But what drove me to real estate was really community development. Being, born and raised in the Bronx, I, wanted to make a difference. And then I learned about community development and specifically how real estate really drives the environments that, the living conditions and the like, the services that we receive and the like in low-income communities that I was born and raised in. So great things got me to the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone, and really, I was, cut my teeth in real estate because I was a guy with a finance, degree, and there was a guy by the name of Roy Swan, who is now one of the senior guys at the Ford Foundation, and he has a great background. He came from Solomon Brothers at the time and giving back. And, he beat the hell out of me for over a year. It was the best beating that I ever got, really, whipping me into shape and trying to say, hey, figure it out. And I went out there, talked to owners, brokers, retailers, and, investors, and became the real estate guy for the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone. Through that experience, I met Richmond McCoy, who was one of the principals and headed up Urban America, and read in the paper that, they were closing on a real estate equity fund focused on investing in low-income communities. And I was like, wow, this is what I want to do. He was an advisor for the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone, and then said, hey, can't continue that because I'm doing this. And it was a great time for me to move on because Debbie Wright, who's head of the Empowerment Zone, she went to run a Carver Bank, and called up, said, hey, nonprofit guy trying to get into the private sector world. just give me $5,000 more in salary because I know lunch is more expensive downtown. It's a true story, and that's how I said, hey, in a year, if things work out, great, pay me what I'm worth. If not, let me go and thank you for the opportunity. And that's how I went into urban America and learned the business. I was given a great opportunity. I took advantage of it to learn the business. Went in there with and left as senior vice president and principal, of a $2 billion private equity fund at the end of the day. So it was a great experience. It was an opportunity for me to learn. I took advantage of it and just ran with it. It was awesome.
Yeah. You bring up a point about those cheaper lunches. That's why last time we got together in Manhattan, we went out to BBQ uptown as opposed to downtown. So
that's right. that's right.
That's right. Washington Heights versus 72nd Street. So it's all good. Yeah. So when you were with the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone, was that the time that Jim Simmons was still there, or was that before him?
So Jim, when I was, we did cross paths, right? So Jim was actually there probably less than a year before I ended up leaving. So a lot of great people came out of the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone. Jim, one of them. Just Hope Knight, for instance, is head of Empire State Development Corporation. She came out of there. Of course, Roy Swan, as I mentioned, among many others. It was a great platform for folks, frankly, to jump into other things. We were Harlem. What was happening in Harlem was really the tester for all inner city, emerging market, communities. So it was a huge testing ground for investors, alike, and retailers alike. So when we came out of there, folks definitely love to see that on the resume, and attracted folks to take our expertise and our knowledge and the like, and try to place that in other communities.
Yeah. Well, Harlem has really gone through a renaissance, and
crazy
in a lot of ways. Yeah, we got to think that that's part of a byproduct of what the work that you guys did back at that period of time.
Yeah, good, better, good, better, bad. I don't know, indifferent. It is. It cuts both ways, right? I say there's a very thin line between economic development and gentrification, right? So
yeah. Well, that's certainly a conversation for another day, but that's always the concern. How do you balance that and kind of walk that fine line between the two? It's an ongoing challenge in every market around the country. So,
yes, sir.
What do you do? But anyway, that's very interesting. So you moved from there, and obviously back in 2009, I think you decided to go out there on your own and open up Monge Capital and Monge Capital, when we get it right. So what's that all about? What are you guys doing now, and what's your expertise as it relates to that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's going to be crazy, about 15 years now. And when I came out of urban America, the sky was falling, right? It was an economic downturn during that time. A lot of people were pivoting, and we were in the process of trying to raise a third fund at the time for New Jersey. And that wasn't necessarily, gaining a lot of steam. When I jumped out, I had this idea that I was going to raise equity and really focus on Hispanic markets, which I thought was underserved and still are today, with a focused effort, intentional effort of speaking to that population, right? When I came out, and having all these meetings and such, related to that, and trying to find a partner, folks are calling me up about my expertise in federal new market tax credits. When I was at Urban America, I led their efforts in that secondary business that we were doing on the fee side for market tax credits, and we were a community development entity, which means basically you have the ability to apply for these credits and act as a middleman, essentially, for the federal government to monetize these tax credits and put them out. So you have to be awarded to be able to do so. At the time when I left, we won 4 out of 5 rounds of allocation, about $200 million worth or so, and top 10 percentile in the country. And it was I was in the industry since the very beginning, so I was an expert in the field. And then very rare thing is that I was an equity guy, commercial real estate guy. So I was a numbers guy beyond understanding the programmatic aspects of it and the like. So everybody was calling me up about that, and I was like, okay, pivot, right? There's something here, which is I do all these other things. If you want to call me up about new markets, that's great, but then it will allow me to get opportunities in other, placing other forms of capital, structuring deals, even trying to be an equity investor, right? Even seeing how I could play in that space on the ownership side. So that's what happened. I went in, and here I am 15 years later, and we're pretty well known in the country, not even New York, right? In the country as a real estate capital advisor, firm, but with this niche expertise in new market tax credits and the ability to structure it with just about anything that you're capable of structuring it with. So, and done some amazing projects nationwide.
Yeah, very good point. So let's talk a little bit about tax credits, because it's an area that a lot of people are not that familiar with. And, there's obviously a variety. So let me ask you, first of all, what are the different types of tax credits related to real estate? You don't have to name all of them, but then we can do a little bit of a dive into the main ones, like the new market, the live tech, the historic, et cetera. What are really the tax credits that are out there? And then, like I said, we could take a little bit of a deeper dive in each one.
Yeah. So the main ones per se, low-income housing tax credits, right, related to affordable housing projects. Obviously, new market tax credits, which is really driven to more so to anything that's not 100% residential. So if you have 20% or more of your gross revenue coming from non-residential activities, new market tax credits is an option. Historic tax credits, which you could use, coupled with both programs. There are copycat, in the good sense, copycat programs, both on the historic tax credit side and the new market tax credit side, that have popped up. And then there are various state credit programs, like, I'm in New Jersey, and New Jersey Economic Development Authority over the years have had different types of state credits that they offer, right? So states offer, and then there's solar credits that's out there as well, among others. But those are the main ones that I've used and I've been part of.
Gotcha. So one thing that a lot of people aren't aware as it relates to tax credits is that they're often stackable as well. Have you been able to implement a lot of deals where you're using that stackable structure on these different tax credits?
Oh yeah. We've done state and federal credits, both on the new market tax credit, state and federal, coupled with historic tax credits. We've done deals where you can't stack light tech and new markets together. Yeah. You can do it side by side. So we've done that as well. So we've done where you'll have residential upstairs, commercial community facility downstairs. So, you're getting financing, construction financing, bridge financing for the whole project as a core and shell. And then you bifurcate the two, one into one program, the other one into the other program. So, ultimately, when there's a will, there's a way to be able to do these things, which is a lot of fun. That's what it's like a chess game, thinking about your moves before you make them, and math, everything. Math is gets you. You can't cheat math, right? The numbers are the numbers, right? So to be able to get there and find a gap and filling those gaps through different sources of capital, it's a lot of fun, and there's not a lot of people that are able to do that the way that we're able to do it. So that's why 15 years later, here we are and growing.
Yeah, still standing. So So let me ask this, for the sake of our audience, some of these things, obviously, I know the answer to, but I want you to elaborate. New market tax credits, why do you often see those or why are those generally a good application for urban markets, just from a new market tax credit side of things?
It really is a replacement for equity, right? So if you have a gap on the private side, because this, both nonprofits and for-profits could take advantage of it, right? So, but if you're on the private side, if you have a gap, you have to come up with equity, right? You get as much debt as you possibly can, and then you're talking about equity or mezz debt, which is going to be a higher cost, of course, of debt. And if you don't have, and it should be a lower cost of equity, but not always the case, depending on how deep your pockets are. So you're talking about a subsidy that costs you zero structurally at the end of a 7-year compliance period for new markets versus a return that's looking for 18% or whatever, 15 to 18%, 20% for equity, right? So that's that's the obvious, right? And when the markets were hot, when you had real cheap capital out there that was highly leverageable, then people don't look for the complexities, right? They say, hey, you know what, I got the numbers work, forget about the complexities of any program. But now, capital markets, are drying up, right? Interest rates are up, leverage is down, and now everybody's, freaking out trying to find subsidy and all of, Cap C, or PACE financing is now a thing when no one was caring about it because of the cost. And, so now all of a sudden people are coming out of the woodworks. The nonprofits, the same, those are the deals that people are focusing on more so in the new market tax credit world today, because the capital markets are real tough now, and nonprofits have a greater ability to raise capital, many nonprofits, so some nonprofits, more so than the private guys that need to come up with money, right? Equity to be able to fill those gaps,
Right. So if I'm looking at a deal, what would be the complexity of that deal for me to say that this is a new market opportunity?
So look, this is the 101 I always say to people, right?
Yep.
That, underwrite the deal, right? So market rents are market rents, right? Hard costs and soft costs, it is what it is, right? So your cost is going to be what your cost is going to be, right? Your rents are driven on market. Those are going to be what they're going to be. And I'm talking about commercial real estate here, right? So you're going to get to an NOI, right? And now you build your capital stack. How are you going to fund this budget? So go into the market. Rates are what rates are. Leverage is going to be what leverage is going to be. So are you talking about 60% leverage, or are you talking about 75% leverage based on where the market is? Are you talking about 4% or 8% interest rate, right? So whatever the real market numbers are going to be, and then you're going to have your gap, right? And if you have to fill your gap with equity, right? If you got the money, right?
Yep.
Put your equity in there. What's your return, right? That it's math. And if the returns aren't there, right, then it's not a deal for you, and you need subsidy, right? And now we're talking about low income communities. The capital markets are a little bit tougher. The costs are the same, but the rents may not be the same, right? Main Street may be charging, a little bit, getting a little higher on the rents than the low income, communities. And that's why there's subsidies out there to be able to right the ship and to be able to make it underwrite. And in most cases, especially today, you can't do a market capitalization for an urban or low income community transaction. It's just the numbers just don't work out. So you are going to need a subsidy, and then it ends up being what's the subsidies that are out there and available, which can you match up and to be able to fill those gaps. But you start with trying to figure out what your gap is, and then you go out there and see what kind of products are out there in your particular market.
Yeah, and that was kind of the point I was driving at, because you wouldn't necessarily look to use a new market tax credit if I'm developing at 57th and 6th Avenue in Manhattan.
No,
right?
so you have to qualify. You have to be in a qualifying census tract, right? So
That's the point I'm driving at, right?
yeah,
So, well, go ahead, elaborate on
yeah,
that, please.
yeah,
Yeah,
you have to be in a qualifying census tract, which is, people call it different things, but it's low, moderate income
right.
communities, and there's a couple of sources that are out there to be able to do the mapping, but the same mapping that you would do for light tech, same community, opportunity zone, opportunity, these are all overlapping programs census tract wise, but you have to be in a low income census tract, and many people will be surprised which census tracts actually qualify for low income. But the other thing, which I'm gonna be straight up with this, is that you can't get something without giving something. And that's where a lot of private, folks mess up, right? Because they want to try to figure out how to get the free money, and that understanding that this free money and subsidy is supposed to be for a reason, right? It's
Yeah,
supposed
yeah.
to be for uplifting our communities. What folks do, they come out and they try to, trick the industry, right? We want to false promises and the like, but literally it's dumb, right? Just do the math, right? If somebody's gonna give you something, it's not that hard to give people in the community an opportunity to be employed. It's not that hard to be focused on providing services to the community. It's easier to not try to do it and try to, fake the funk, but it totally goes against the programs that are out there. And unfortunately, on both sides, right? There are developers that are trying to get something for nothing. And
Mhm.
then sometimes there are people in the capacity that's supposed to be the gatekeepers that don't do a good enough job in making sure that the projects that they're funding are really truly meeting the mission of the programs.
Yeah, yeah. And that's kind of the key, the mission of the program and making sure that you fit into that. So with that in mind, what exactly is LIHTC? What do those initials stand for, and what is the normal application of a LIHTC situation? They certainly overlap, but let me have you elaborate on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's a low income housing tax credit is the program, and a federal driven program. And I'll confess, I am not a light tech guy. Don't want to be a light tech guy.
Okay.
I know enough to make me dangerous, but know enough to be able to couple the commercial community facility mixed use projects that I do and the operating business projects that I do to make it work. But there are a lot of restrictions as it pertains to the light tech program. And if not to jump too deep into it, but when folks talk about being developers in the light tech world, you're basically restricting the use of those spaces of those apartments, obviously to income restriction on tenancy and the like, and how they're set up, frankly, is that the way to quote unquote make a living or make money as a developer on the light tech side is really developer fees. If you really, and I took some time over a number of years to try to figure out what drives the light tech model, and how could I match it the best way possible with new markets in particular. And in underwriting those deals that we were working on, you have a big developer fee, which is more sizable than a commercial deal that you normally pencil in like a 4%, kind of the back of the napkin. I've seen fees north of 10% on the developer fee. When how those deals are underwritten for a lot of developers is really about a developer fee versus cash flow, and you're going to sell in year 10 and stuff like that. It's not really driven that way. So it is pretty interesting. The one thing that I will say also about light tech, in a lot of these programs, unfortunately, and the people that chase these programs, is that developers underwrite deals based on the financing, right? And I'm gonna expand on that. So a light tech deal, for instance, you could only get a tax credit on the residential aspects of the project. So if you did a 40,000, you had the ability to build 40,000 square feet of commercial space, and you needed tenant improvements, right? Because you're in a low income community, the community businesses there
might be a food desert.
Yeah, they're not going in and say, hey, I want to rent space, and I'm gonna put in $1 million of work into the deal. They want people to build out the space for them, give them some tenant improvement dollars, but you can't get credit against the LIHTC for those tenant improvement dollars, which is, which doesn't. So think about underwriting, right?
Yeah.
So why are you going to underwrite tenant improvement dollars if you can't get a credit for it, and you're going to be upside down? So what people end up doing is that they start underwriting smaller spaces, right, to be able to match up to underwriting, having a deal that underwrites, right? How do you get the subsidy? You're going to build out space that you can get a subsidy on. Don't build out space that you're not getting a subsidy on, because then you're upside down.
Right.
So, but let's think about, how upside down that is, right? You're talking about a community of need. So you have a big space that you have, and so you're downsizing it. So that's less retail space, so less services, less jobs, less community healthcare space, which is
chicken wings and hair salon, right?
Right. You know what I'm saying? Or
fried chicken.
Right. Well, Joe, how many times have you gone and saw a LIHTC deal in the city, and you see the space vacant on the first floor? Why? Because they built the core. Well, they built the core and shell.
Yeah.
Right. And they're renting it, trying to look for a tenant that's going to, finance their fit out, because the owner doesn't want to finance the fit out. Yeah. So it sits there vacant. And they most of the time when they underwrite that community or commercial space, they're underwriting a donut, right? The investors are underwriting a donut for it anyway, because it's core and shell. So very upside down, very upside down. Some of these programs versus what's happening in the market, and sometimes even the mission.
Yeah. So good point to keep in mind. LIHTC certainly is an application for urban core development, but like with everything else, it has to be structured right. And most people aren't aware of the hold period, that's associated with that. And that definitely plays into the exit, on a situation like that. So very powerful point. And then the other ones that we run across oftentimes is historic. Correct me if I'm wrong, generally in historic tax credits, the facade needs to remain the same, but you can do interior improvements, sometimes build on to the facility.
If you, so you could get you can get a credit, tax credit on the facade or the facade and the interior, right? And we did a real matter of fact, right down the block from my office, we did the headquarters for Audible. So Audible.com, it's an Amazon company. They had their headquarters here in downtown Newark. We did new market tax credits. It was a state program, and we were going to do historics on it, right? And it was an old church and a rectory, and it sat vacant for probably a couple of decades because think about the cost of renovating or repurposing a church, right? So that was very cost prohibitive. With the combinations of all these subsidies, we were able to put together a deal where I think they probably brought about 400 jobs to here in this Newark area, and they're doing a lot of great things with small businesses and students over here in downtown Newark. But when we started underwriting the cost of, or the benefit of the historic tax credits, which is about 20% on eligible cost, against the cost of rehabbing the space, we actually were almost upside down. And then when an architect said, "Hey, you could have a mezzanine in this old
inside the church
space, and a mezzanine space in there, and get, I don't know, I forget how 20,000 square feet more of space or whatever it was." And then obviously the economics related to that, but you couldn't do it without damaging the historical, significance, or maintaining the historical significance of the space related to the historical tax credit requirements, it didn't make any sense, right? So we actually gave up the historic tax credits in the underwriting and the opportunity there, and we traded off, getting more rentable square footage, right? So, but historics is great if you understand it. And if you understand how to underwrite it. On a different side, I've actually been brought into deals, not even just one, but multiple deals where people took on the historic tax credit application, put it on the registry, went through the whole thing, and then didn't understand the numbers. And they were stuck, that they had to keep the historical aspects of the building, and the costs were exceeded the benefit.
Yeah.
So they were upside down. So it's very important to understand how to underwrite these deals and the responsibilities that come along with it.
Yeah, yeah. Good point. Talk to me also about opportunity zones. Those have become very, very popular, I don't know, 4 years ago or so. And, it kind of tailed off in top popularity as of late, but there's still a lot of opportunity out there, and there's still money out there looking for deals. So what could you tell us about opportunity zones and why people should consider investing in them?
Well, I have an opportunity zone fund, and where we have a matter of fact across the street from where I'm at, renovating. Actually finished up a commercial building and lot that we did with opportunity zone and the opportunity zone structure. The opportunity zone program, when it came out, I'm too old to get in trouble anymore. So, I was on a lot of panels, and then in the beginning, then I stopped getting invited to panels, and probably I'll tell you why is that I was saying because it's a sister program, as the requirements essentially to the new market tax credit. So there's when it came out, I was very familiar with how they were positioning the program and the requirements and the like, because of new markets, and it was a natural thing for me to start going into and becoming an expert. And if you remember, when everybody's saying, "Oh, we're raising $100 million opportunity zone fund," everybody had a fund, and I'm sitting there saying, there ain't nobody got no funds, right? Yeah, but we got a couple of people that obviously were able to do some funds, but a lot of it was a lot of smoke and mirrors, right? And it came out as this trickle down, economic development initiative, right? People thought that you could bring people in that of wealthy folks to invest into low income communities, and they will do the right thing and do deals that are going to create economic impact to low income communities, but there were no requirements for them to do so, right? So there was no unlike new market tax credits, you have to create jobs and all this stuff, and that's what you're judged by. On the opportunity zone side, there was no requirements other than investing in those census tracts.
Yeah.
So I think that was an epic failure in how that program was designed. But on the investor side, if you're going to invest in low income communities, that's what you do, right? And now you have some capital gains. Why not, right? It's just another way of getting away from paying capital gains, right? Because the program, the home run of the program is that the money that you invested, anything above that in capital gains wise, you're able to have no capital gains exposure after a 10-year period. Mm-hmm. So it's great for investors. It wasn't that great for the community. And the thought process was that you were going to have a lot more new investors coming in. But some of those folks that I did run into, because I've met a lot over the last few years, is that they didn't understand the complexities of investing in low income communities, right? It's still, what I said, cost to here. If you're just doing it with capital, or regular market capital, which value it ends up being here, and you need subsidies to make it right. So those folks had the tax credit equity, the capital gains, money coming in. Sure. So they were able to, get some benefit from it. But in order to make deals work, they still needed to understand community development finance. and be able to layer in those other dollars. Those folks didn't know about that. They didn't, you didn't have, and they ran away. Like
and some didn't care.
Some did. Oh, we saw it. We have that out here in Newark. In Newark, there's a lot of deals that there's no way in hell that they're underwrites. But but different money, right? When you have big money chasing stuff, and you're willing to hold it for 20 years, and you're waiting for appreciation, then not many people could do that, except for people who really deep pockets.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of good information related to that, and opportunity zones are still great situations, but again, to your point, people need to play into what is the purpose behind it. There is a benevolent purpose behind it, but oftentimes not realized, and that's where things go sideways. So very good point from that standpoint. There were two other things that I wanted to pivot and focus in on, unless there was something else you wanted to add to the conversation about tax credits. Anything else related to that, or any other types of credit that you think people need to be considering and looking at?
Well, one thing on the new market tax credit side, and to talk about one of our partners, Lendistry, so Lending Chemistry. So we are able to partner up with Lendistry, which a black-owned led fintech company that's also a CDFI lender, a community development finance institution lender, and they're doing amazing things. And the partners there, Everett Sands runs Lendistry, and the chair is David Bramble, who we both know, doing amazing things out in Baltimore and beyond. And we partnered up with them to build their new market tax credit platform, and won $35 million of allocation a couple of rounds ago, and we're back trying to help them apply for more. What you're able to do in new market tax credits as well is a small business loan fund, right? So we actually closed a little over $23 million in a small business loan fund focused on minority business enterprises with U.S. Bank, through the Lendistry allocation. And now looking to place that. So it's up to $4 million. So you go a little at $50 million up to $4 million. And what they're doing is that they're taking market money, call it about 70% of the dollar, right? Being market money, and blending it with 30% subsidy coming from the tax credit. So the idea is that you're able to provide below market flexible rates, up to 5-year terms, no prepayment penalties, and other flexible opportunities for operating businesses, both nonprofit and for-profit. So this is really balance sheet lending, working capital, which is very unique, and not, you're not going to see that out in the market. That is something else that you could do with the tax credits that's a little bit outside the box. Another thing that we're doing is for sale housing. Our client, the Urban League of Essex County, we're actually, doing a for sale housing product where they're receiving this new market tax credit benefit. They're building 2-family homes that they're selling, and then they're keeping the note, right? So they're building them, selling them, keeping the notes, which is an eligible new market tax credit activity. And at the end of 7 years, the idea is to sell those notes to a bank, and one of the banks that we're working with there is Industrial Bank, and that's also with a nonprofit called NCIF, and then Wells Fargo as a tax credit investor. So I just wanted to mention those two unique ways that you could use new markets as well.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. When you talk about businesses, is there any types of businesses specifically, or and it just range from restaurants to shoe repair shops? I mean, just any.
So we had a paper company, a Black woman-led paper company out of Jersey. Was one of the first recipients. So they do, cards or anything that's paper product. From that to, we actually have a distillery that received an investment. You do have some operating real estate developers that are out there, restaurateurs. We have one applicant that's in that has a chain of restaurants. So it can really run the gamut. So, all you have, but you do have to be in a low income community. And obviously, we're targeting underserved, MBE businesses is the goal.
Yeah. All right. That's interesting. How long do those businesses need to be around? How long in business?
You are underwrite. You are doing a balance sheet underwriting, right? So you got to have a balance sheet. So so I think that kind of speaks for itself. But there's no particular. You have to be 10 years in business, but it is for existing operating businesses and size really. I think it's the argument of the size really doesn't matter. It really depends on what your application and what your needs are and what the future holds. Because the other thing is that I'll say is that they also are looking at projections, right? A lot of times, it's kind of like, well, what do you got now? But it's so I should say it's beyond balance sheets. It's also looking at projections where a lot of folks don't even look at the projections, right? They give you zero credit for that. But Lendistry is looking at that growth capital opportunity for businesses.
All right. Well, good point. Good point to keep in mind. We actually get I wouldn't say an enormous amount of calls, but we get a good bit of interest in individuals that are, doing non-real estate stuff, and they need financing, whether it be, actually, believe it or not, we got a bunch of restaurant offerings that came in just recently. So it's something that we could talk about offline, but
yeah. Let me say this. I was out in the market. I could, unfortunately, if I could have benefited, because that's conflict of interest, I can't, but boy, this is a product, right? Because a lot of the products that people are putting out there for minority developers and the like, it was all LIHTC driven, right? Because LIHTC is very easier to underwrite and to manage the risk, because like I was saying before, all the money comes in really at closing. But for everybody else, we didn't have a source of capital, and even yours truly, I was out there trying to find money for my particular, I have a Freakonomics type of a business. I was able to have a New Jersey Community Capital listen to me, and they're a CDFI lender, obviously out here in New Jersey. And they were able to listen to my needs, understand my business, and I'm actually in the process of closing some financing with them as we speak. So, kudos to them, and one of the few folks that are really trying to target, businesses that are not, project specific development deals, So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Jeff, because I know a lot of times, especially when all these incentives came out to help minority developers, it was like, well, we'll give you LIHTC deals in order to do in your own community and everything else. And it's like, well, now you're pigeonholing me, right?
Yeah,
all the areas that you used to rent line, you're saying, well, we're only going to let you develop there. And, it becomes another form of discrimination, if you will, because it's locking you in only developing in certain areas.
You think about a lot of this money that came out, and people. What we need is working capital, right? What we need is equity, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of folks that are out here that are doing this work, they're lenders. They're not equity investors, right?
Right.
So there's a mismatch, I think, on what the need is to really build wealth, and what the products that are out there, the people that are trying to implement the products. And I hear that across the table. I talk to a lot of folks just like you. And you and I have our own needs as business folks, right? So, and I'm hoping that people have greater flexibility, especially all this ESG money that's supposed to be out there, but it's getting funneled through the same
gatekeepers. Yep.
And it's coming out the same type of product. So that needs to change if we really want to create some change here. And build some wealth with folks that want to do good and do well.
Yeah, very good point. I do want to kind of build on that in two specific areas real quick that you brought up earlier that I think really need to be highlighted. I know you're very active in one of the Latin chambers of commerce related to commercial real estate. I guess I would ask, why do you think it is we don't see more Latins in real estate, commercial real estate? I mean, there's, just very few, like there are Blacks. There's no path.
There's no path. And what's interesting is that there are some organizations that are out there that are doing tremendous work, especially working with the Latino community. A lot of those, but it's really, pushing towards Wall Street, pushing towards equity and even operating business. But commercial real estate, you don't really have that. That is an issue, and it's something that I've been trying to work with as much as possible, making myself more visible, talking about the issues, expressing the opportunities in commercial real estate. So, I'm a big supporter of Project REIT and have been a speaker and a lecturer for several years, going way back when Michael Bush really launched Project REIT. I'm part of the Hispanic Scholarship Fund Advisory Committee for New York. So when I get out there, I try to make a difference. I obviously part of the Real Estate Executive Council and try to be as active as possible, right? Because folks will say, "Oh man, there's not a lot of Latinos in Reese, right? It's a Black organization. It's not a Latino organization as well." But that's not what it is, nor should it be allowed, right? You got to be in it to win it, and then you have to be able to make change by letting people see you, right? And being out there, being accessible. And then I recently joined an organization called REAL, REAL, like real in English. So it's really the first that I know, and I've been doing this for a long time, and I've been part of ICSC, Hispanic Markets Initiative, and other initiatives. But it's the first commercial real estate focused association that's being, the groundwork is already there, and we're building the foundation for national exposure. And I was recently added to the board of Real. So you're going to see a lot of good things coming out of that group. And then lastly, with a friend and partner in crime here, or partner in good, Gina Nesbitt, who's used to be at Citibank and now running her own consulting firm. We started a group called a nonprofit called Open Access, and the idea is really to bring more Black and Brown professionals into community development finance, right? And there's obviously intertwined between commercial real estate and community development finance. Commercial real estate is much harder to get into and build your career in my opinion. Commercial community development finance, like it was for me, is a great way to get into commercial real estate while still being able to do some good, right? That's what we at the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone. I did a number of commercial real estate deals, right? So and I was probably working at a higher level than I would have if I was coming out, green as I was trying to do it in the private sector. So what we're doing is we put together this very unique fellowship. So it's a working fellowship. So you could have a job, you could be a grad student, or even in between job, whatever the case may be. But the idea is to be able to get 160 hours of work experience. So you would be working, like, for instance, Monge Capital over a 3-month period. I get you 160 hours of work hours, whether it's before work, after work, during work. We could figure that out if selected. You're paid, right? So I'm not getting slave labor. I'll actually pay you. And then training. So there's training provided by Novogradac, which on the tax credit programs. But also this year, which is great, we actually have underwriting training. Everybody talks about underwriting. Everybody wants to do everything and not know the numbers, right? So an opportunity to learn the numbers. And then another big thing is networking. So we're getting, some one-on-one, some panel discussions, and opening up our Rolodex, our contacts to these fellows. So we're in our 3rd year. We got our 501c3 just recently, so we're official now. We had a fiscal sponsor in Project REIT the first 2 years, but now we're off on our own, and we raised capital from folks like U.S. Bank, M&T, PNC, Chase, among others that have been very supportive of the idea. and we're placing people into the industry, which is amazing. Just recently, a couple of days ago, we have one gentleman that was just hired by L&M, which is a big developer over here. Yeah, and as a counsel for L&M, which is awesome.
Yeah,
we have people that are doing different things that and coming into the industry with the intentionality of trying to do good and do well, right? And that's what we need. And then through that process, obviously, we're trying to make sure that we have the some focus, that we could have some diversity, that we can get those Latinos in, and we're making people responsible. Like you have a responsibility, I have a responsibility to reach back, right? We're all in the reach back program, and if you're not, then you're doing a disservice to the people that you represent. And I'm saying that straight up, right? And dudes like me, right? I'm a light, right? I could go, I could probably, change my Bronx accent and get away with it and forget, right? But it's not right. That's not, I can't leave, my background, my cultural background, and my people, my family, my friends behind. I have to do my part to be able to get other people that want to do good and do well to be able to, have a representation of an industry, right, that serves Black and brown folks in low-income communities. How do you have that? Where you have the people that serve good people, a lot, I'm not saying people are bad, right? Yeah. But if you don't have the lenses of the people that you're servicing, then how are you maximizing that, right? So doctors come in and they want, they go to a plumbing convention, they may do some plumbing at home, but do they see the lenses of what the plumbers, needs and wants are? And the answer is no, right? So, and you can't put down on your resume most of the time that, hey, what are your skills? My skills is I know my neighborhood. You want to invest in the Bronx? I got that, right?
Yeah.
You're not, I'm Puerto Rican, but that should be a chip on your shoulder. People should see that as an advantage, right? That you understand your client base, right? Yeah. Then everything else, obviously, you have to be able to carry the weight of those skills. But that is something that we should be able to leverage in this industry and have the representation, because it is a plus.
Yeah. No, valid point, man. Valid point. So let me conclude on this point. You mentioned earlier about how you started off your career. Obviously, it's been a long road. I've seen you grow, and obviously you've seen me over the years. But you mentioned early on about your first opportunity. You were beat to death, but it made you cut your teeth. What would you say about the value of being beat to death and not being afraid of actually going out there and having to figure it out? As long as you have the support. We're not saying go out there on your own, but is there some value to that, in your opinion, of having somebody say, you know what, you figure it out and help guide you along the way?
My kids know. They always go, oh, I know, figure it out, right? Yep. And you have to, right? When you start looking back, I was crazy. I was having this conversation yesterday, right? I grew up, and I was saying the story about how my father, this is back in the days, right? My father actually had a sheepskin, right? My biological father, he had sheepskin, and I said, and he's like, oh, go ahead, wear it, right? So I walked home. And I was walking as hard as possible, boy. You would think that I had machine guns underneath my jacket, right? but in a community, you're raised tough, right? That somebody may stick you up for your coat.
Yeah, I know.
You understand, right?
So, I had a few sheepskins. I get it.
Right? And you think about and it's not necessary. It's about the challenge, right? It's about the fear factor. Is about only the strong survive, right? And that's what happens in our communities, right? Yeah. Only the strong survive. Where in other communities, the strong survive, not so strong. Sometimes the weak survive because of the resources that they have.
Sure.
So I say that to say that, if you could figure that out, everything else is really a thing about self-consciousness. Biggest thing that I needed to get over was, can I do that? I can do all this stuff, but can I do that? Feeling inferior. When my first year in college, I was, in classes, I was, everybody, was white. There was no blacks and Latinos in many classes. And I knew that I came out, I went to DeWitt Clinton High School, which, DeWitt.
Up in the Bronx, yep.
Yeah, up in the Bronx. And I came out and I said, man, I had an inferior education. And I got mad,
Yeah.
right? And some other folks could feel inferior. And I felt some of that, but I was more angry. I got more aggressive. And I said, you know what? I'm going to show them and, and I'm going to figure it out, right? I am going to figure it out. And that is, that is something that people have to understand. Don't get angry, right? Get even, right?
Yeah.
And you get even, not by, going to your 9 to 5. It's like, for me, I was studying. I learned Argus on my own. If I had questions, I asked people. I went to, networking events. I figured it out. And people have to have that chip on their shoulder and understand that you got to go and you got to figure it out. And I say, hip hop. I think I told you I'm representing the Universal Hip Hop Museum and trying to get that project opened out in the Bronx. And hip hop, right? There's a lot of things that I remember growing up. There's certain lines, right? I got something on my mind. I refuse to lose, right?
Yeah.
Getting me, right? There's certain things, but that type of approach that you got to figure it out. You got to, and it's not a 9 to 5. It's what you do outside of the classroom per se that really helps you, exceed in life.
Yeah. And you shouldn't be scared of it. You
can't be scared.
Gotta face it head on. And like you said, you shouldn't be afraid of hard work.
That's
just
right.
Get out there. And if you want it bad enough, you'll put the work in and figure it out.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah. So Jeff, it's been a great conversation. We generally run about an hour. We're 6 minutes over. Any final words to our audience as we kind of wrap this up for today?
This is like my last, I don't know how long I'll be working for, right? But it's kind of like, this is like my last 10 years or whatever you want to call it.
Your last run.
Yeah. Right. So to me, it's just like, we just need people that want to do good and do well. It's not that hard. You can be successful in doing so. You really can't forget where you came from or the people that you represent. And if you don't do that, and if you, approach things, with the do good and do well mentality, it just going to help make the world go around, a little smoother. So figure it out.
Yeah. Well, very good points. Jeff, we certainly appreciate it. Obviously, I'm gonna catch up with you off camera and we'll talk about some other things, but it's been a great conversation. We know that tax credits is often a very confusing and kind of, covert type way of getting things done for people who don't know. So I certainly wanted to have you on to talk about that. And even with the tax credit space, most people know about LIHTC. They don't know really about the new markets and the application of those. So we appreciate you giving us background on that. And other than that, it's been a great conversation and, much continued success to you.
Yes,
I'm sure we'll meet in deals again. And, we'll certainly continue to get things done. And it's been been great knowing you all these years, and we'll keep it going.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
We have this last run.
Yes, sir. Right. That's right.
Exactly.
All right, thanks a lot. I appreciate you.
Yeah, man. And thank you all for watching the Mornings with Joel CRE podcast with our special guest, Jeff Monge. And we will certainly catch up with you guys on our next episode. Thank you, Jeff. We do appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Mornings with Joel CRE podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to write a brief review. And as always, continue to invite, share, and subscribe.